Hi, IPHS 403. In this module, Module 2, we turn to community health assessment and improvement, topics that I currently focus on in my public health work. Here in this module, we'll focus on a social ecological perspective of the multiple influences on the health status of a population and incorporate appropriate measures of health and illness, including risk factors, into a community health needs assessment activity, as well as develop a community health improvement strategy that identifies community priorities and mobilizes community resources to effectively address agreed upon priorities. To highlight measures of health and illness, including those risk factors, we'll turn back to the epidemic scorecard. Let's now create our own scorecard of public health matters. But let's first get a sense of the magnitude of these matters. Please focus on these next 3 slides. How do we measure population health? We can look at leading causes of death, the actual causes of death, the age-adjusted years of potential life loss can be a very useful measure. And look at the impact of these social and behavioral factors on quality-adjusted life years. Now, let's return to our epidemic scorecard that you might remember from the last module as an exercise on your own, or even better with your group. Write down the public health matters you believe to have the most significant impact on overall health status. What measures did you use to create this list? Then place each into a box or rectangle proportional to the importance of that matter as a public health problem. Your most important diseases will be in the largest boxes or rectangles. And actually, here's another really interesting exercise that you can do or look through on your own. How are causes of death determined? Do we use the underlying risk and contributing factors to classify causes of death? Or strictly the disease or injury? Here's an example of how you can create a scorecard while you're working on this exercise, debating which should be listed on the death certificate. Position A, only diseases or injury codes, or position B, only underlying risk and contributing factors listed as the cause of death. So now, before we look at our case study, it's important to understand how the risk factors and assets work together in an ecological model. To review, this model reminds us that our health is influenced by the interaction between multiple levels all around us, like the individual or interpersonal level, the intrapersonal or group level, community, and the physical, social, and political environmental levels. We are using this key public health theoretical framework to understand community health assessment and improvement. Let's now turn to our case studies. In this module's case studies, we can actually still diagnose the same themes, especially the ones of specific focus in the milk outbreak case study from Module 1, such as, like we discussed, that of scientific, legal, ethical, and financial issues. In these 3 case studies of this module, we'll be thinking about categories of factors that influence health in populations. From the ecological perspective, as we've said, we concentrate on the interaction of multiple factors and pathways. Assessing risk factors, we determine their increased likelihood of causing a certain condition or disease. And essential to public health practice today are social and cultural determinants, such as the social status and standing. And we look toward global health influences like population, pollution, poverty as examples. For this unit, we want for your attention to be directly focused on the categories of factors that influence health in populations. When responding to each of these case studies, be sure to keep in mind that we're assessing or monitoring health at the population level, with population-minded, not clinical-minded parameters. Looking at the carbon nanotubes case study first, we can clearly see the ethical issues at play here. The development of CNT-based applications in a wide range of products is expected to provide great social benefit. Worker safety and health is a cornerstone of responsible development of an emergent technology because workers are the first people in society to be exposed to the products of this technology. So evidence in animal studies show lung exposures and cancers, like what results from asbestos, in regard to carbon nanotubes. So, the ethical question we must ask is it ethical to move forward with CNT production and use it with the unknown magnitude and implications of its health risk? And what types of public health surveillance might then be necessary if we do think we should move forward? Now we'll quickly jump into our second case study and the Gulf oil spill and its health impacts. Most of you probably remember when this happened back in April of 2010. This awful tragedy becomes an important public health study. Keeping within the same framework that we've been talking about, the social ecological model, and measuring population health when thinking about this event, what are some of the potential health consequences of the Gulf oil spill, and into what general categories do these fit? Here are 4 examples that you can think about as you pursue this conferencing exercise, but we're also going to focus on this case study in other modules and to develop some of our tools because there are multiple important public health lessons to take away. There are multiple angles for studying this tragic event. This week, in our conferencing exercise, we're going to think about the role of communication with the public in situations of disaster. How is the work of public health professionals helped or hindered by communication choices? And what other factors might also contribute to or compromise our understanding of the effects of the oil spill on human health and well-being? We'll actually further explore health impacts of the Gulf oil spill, focusing on community health indicators as one of our tools next week. We're going to now shift to our Wyandotte County case study. And this small red dot is Wyandotte County. And here is the metropolitan area of Kansas City, Kansas for perspective. Do you see Wyandotte? To prepare you for our tools next week, in addition to responding to the question prompt for this week's conferencing exercise, come up with a short list of problems, as we did with the scorecard exercise, that Wyandotte County faces. Be sure that you're contextualizing within this ecological framework that we've introduced here. Then, come up with a list of possible steps to intervene. Does this county have the capacity for these steps? Once you determine which steps are doable in Wyandotte, using different data synthesis and prioritization decision tools, analyze how the specific tool led to the decision you've come up with. Thank you for tuning in. Please let me know, as always, if you have any questions.